Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Tips. My name is Julian, and in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about players that you can consider dropping from your lineup ahead of week 4 of the fantasy hockey season. Before we get started, guys, please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Really appreciate all of your support, guys. Without further ado, let's jump right into the content and start talking about some forwards that I think we should consider dropping. First on the list, guys, is Tomas Hertl of the San Jose Sharks, and since game 1, he has only 1 point in 6 games, which is really not great, and the underlying stats don't say that he's been unlucky or anything like that, so it's quite possible that Hertl just has an underwhelming season this year, which is unfortunate because I do really like Hertl as a player, but he's not producing for you right now. And honestly, I'm not super optimistic that he's going to produce like he did in the past this season. Next is Pavel Buchnevich of the St. Louis Blues. And I wasn't a huge fan of Buchnevich coming into the season. I didn't think he was going to have that big of a role on St. Louis. I think he was going to be a third liner. And that's what it's looking like right now. His ice time, not great. He's only getting PP2 time. His line mates right now are Bozak and James Neal. Just not a great situation for him. So I would drop him in all but the deepest of leagues. Next is my Manscaped must trim of the video, Alexis Lafreniere. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code FANTASYTIPS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code word FANTASYTIPS at checkout at manscaped.com. Guys, unlock your confidence and use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. So do me a favor, guys, and get your Christmas gifts early this year. Head over to manscaped.com. Use the code word fantasy tip. You'll get 20% off your order and free shipping anywhere in the world. Thanks so much, guys. So why is Lafreniere my Manscaped must trim of the video? Well, Lafreniere only has 4 points in 8 games, and his deployment really isn't great. He's being played on the third line with Hedl, and it's just not that great. He's not getting a lot of ice time. He's getting very little power play time, and when he is, it's on the second power play, and I just don't really see that changing, which is why Lafreniere is a drop in all but the deepest of leagues for me. Next is Nino Niederreiter, and I had him on this list prior to the news about him being injured just because Carolina does not have a great schedule this week, only 2 games, and now with Niederreiter coming out that he has an injury and he's going to be out a while, makes for a really easy drop for me. He's playing on the third line, so really there's no reason to keep this guy on your roster unless you have a lot of IR room for whatever reason. And last for the forwards, I have Denis Gurianov, and he's playing on the third line with Radek Faksa, and it's just not a great line, and he's not producing this year, so it makes for a pretty easy drop in my opinion. Next is Mattias Ekholm, and he only has 1 point through 7 games, which really is not great. He's only getting second power play time on Nashville, and that power play really isn't that great, and he's not really putting up any peripherals right now, so honestly, there are probably better options out there than Mattias Ekholm, because he's just really not doing anything. This is Ty Smith of the New Jersey Devils, and he's still a drop for me, currently still 35% owned, getting PP2 time in New Jersey. He's also someone who's not doing anything, and I don't really expect him to do a whole lot either. He's not really a peripheral guy either, so there's really no reason to have him on your team. Next, I have Justin Schultz of the Washington Capitals. He's another guy who's not doing anything. He's only a power play 2 guy in Washington. Washington's all about their PP1, so there's really no point having Justin Schultz on your team unless John Carlson gets injured, in which case Justin Schultz jumps onto the top power play and definitely has some value. Next is Phil Pronik of the Detroit Red Wings, and he was healthy scratched for a couple of games last week, and for that reason, I don't really trust him in my lineup anymore. I don't want a guy who possibly is going to be healthy scratched on any given night. That's too risky for me, and that's why Pronik is a drop. Next is Dmitry Orlov, and he's also a power play 2 guy in Washington, and he's not going to get that many points. He had a little bit of a good stretch recently, but he's not really going to put up that many points, or not even really that many peripherals either, which is why Orlov is a pretty safe drop for me. And last, I have Ryan Graves of the New Jersey Devils, currently 10% owned, and he had a really good first couple of games for New Jersey. People were like, oh yeah, see, Ryan Graves is a great defenseman. I was telling people to not draft this guy. Like, he's not going to have that great of a season with New Jersey. It's just not Colorado. He's just not going to be able to put up the same peripherals he did in Colorado. And over the last few games, you guys have seen, he's pretty much done nothing. So Ryan Graves, to me, doesn't have a lot of value this season and shouldn't really be owned in more than a couple % of leagues. Jumping into some goalies now, and first I have Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins, and it looks like Linus Ullmark is starting to get more and more starts in Boston. and Swayman's getting 1 out of every 3 starts or so, which is not a lot. So if you're in a league where there's goalies available that are getting half the starts or more than that, I would probably drop Swayman for one of those guys, because at least you're going to get some more starts. Next is Mikko Koskinen of the Edmonton Oilers, and it looks like Mike Smith is finally going to rejoin the team very, very shortly. So as soon as he does, Mikko Koskinen doesn't have a whole lot of value. He did play pretty well while he replaced Mike Smith with the injury, so it's possible that he earned himself a couple more games here and there, but I do think Mike Smith is going to continue to get the bulk of the starts in Edmonton. Next is Kaapo Kähkönen of the Minnesota Wild, and the only game he's gotten so far was a back-to-back, and he did not perform well. So Cam Talbot's going to continue to get basically every start in Minnesota. I am not worried about Talbot. Therefore, Kähkönen is a pretty easy drop. Next is Jake Ottinger of the Dallas Stars, and he's not going to play this year, right? Dallas has Holtby and Khudobin right now manning the crease in Dallas, and they also got Ben Bishop, who's going to come back soon. So Ottinger is basically the number 4 goalie in Dallas. So unless one of the goalies goes down before Bishop comes back, Ottinger will then become the backup and may get a few starts. But really, that's you have to be banking on an injury here for him to have any kind of value. So Ottinger to me is a really easy drop. Next is Yaroslav Halak, and people thought maybe he'll get maybe half to a third of the games in Vancouver, which would make him a borderline rosterable player, but he looks like he's only going to get about 1 out of every 4 games playing for Vancouver, which makes him a very hard player to roster, and he's a drop for me. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Please leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hope you guys enjoyed the content today, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Fantasy Tipped.